Hey, everybody. Welcome to that Tom Clancy show. And as always, thank you so very much for joining me. I know I've spent the last 4 weeks trying to figure out a time that's actually going to work for the show. And we were doing Friday nights, and then we did Sunday night. And then today we're doing Friday afternoon. But there's a very good reason for that. We've got a guest. I'll get into that in just a moment. I know, it's been another crazy week. And I really, really wish that we could say it hadn't been because I'm getting really sick of all of this, as I'm sure all of you are. It goes without saying that I hope that you all are being safe and that you and your family are all doing well. And my heart goes out to you guys because you're awesome. You're the reason why I'm doing this. And you guys come in with all the fun, silly questions that I get to answer sometimes. But this time, I get to ask the questions. My guest today is a man who really needs no introduction, but he definitely deserves a better one than I'm about to give him. He's an independent video game developer, a conference speaker, an agent of chaos, and a ruiner of New England clam chowder. Ladies and gentlemen, Rami Ismail. I told you I was going deep. Can't hear Rami at all. Oh, crap. 1 second, guys. Technical difficulties. This is an easy fix. It's an easy fix. Where's my mouse cursor? There we are. I think. There we go. Liam, thank you so much for pointing that out. That is Liam Twos there in the chat. Thank you, Liam. It's good to have you here. Thank you for being here. Liam's another friend of mine who's also in game dev, and he's another potential future guest of the show. But shh, that's a secret.
I mean, I told everybody like 5 minutes ago, but apparently I was muted. So
but yeah. So for everybody who's been listening, we've been talking about how the Netherlands is small, roughly 3 Rhode Islands in size, and I've never been there.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's nice. The Netherlands is really nice. I can't believe you've missed the Netherlands in terms of airports.
Well, let's see. From Chicago, which is where I've done the bulk of my international traveling as an adult from, they have direct flights to pretty much everywhere. So unless you're going to the Netherlands specifically,
there's no reason to hop through the Netherlands.
Yeah, you're going to end up missing it. And then otherwise, I grew up on the East Coast, and I mean, about 45 minutes from DC, and with DC and Baltimore right there, you have immediate access to all of your, I mean, hell, the Concorde used to land at Dulles.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's one of the biggest international hubs in Europe. So usually somebody at least kind of ends up in the Netherlands once or twice. But
yeah, my wife
Chicago is a hub as well. So
yeah, I miss Chicago.
I miss airports.
Yeah, God, dude, I earlier today I high-fived my wife, and it was the first time I've high-fived anyone in a month, and it was the best high five of my life.
It's a little like Ramadan, where no matter what I'm eating at the end of the day, it's always the best meal.
Oh, that reminds me, Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you. We're getting to the end. It's like a week left.
I'm not gonna lie, I checked earlier just to make sure that it was actually still Ramadan.
I appreciate that.
Because I'm for anyone who doesn't know me particularly well, I'm a really hard atheist. So I keep up with holidays based on what my friends are talking about. So and then too, as an American, the only holiday that I really know off the top of my head is December Christmas. I was going to say December 4th of July, but
the new combination holiday.
Yeah, I mean it's basically the same thing,
I mean, I would like to see Santa dodge some fireworks, to be honest. Make for a pretty good movie.
I feel like Ernest dodged some fireworks when he saved Christmas. But it's been a long time since I saw that movie.
There's so many Christmas movies.
There really are.
There's just so many. It's one of those things where now I'm just searching for Ramadan movies. That's a lot harder.
Well, I imagine you're not going to find any of them in the U.S.
You don't.
We have a dubious reputation with that entire portion of the world, at
So
best.
a very diplomatic way of saying that.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid overt political statements on my show until I get to a point where I can't. And then when I
Yeah.
can't, I just let them all fly.
Just one episode. It's just this is
Well,
the political episode. We're just going for an hour straight. Here's every political opinion.
yeah, it was one of my last streams before I hit affiliate. I was playing Super Metroid on the Switch Virtual Console, and I don't know what it was, but I just like put down the controller and I just basically laid out my entire platform.
Wow.
And it was like a 15-minute rant of like, I think all Americans are equal and all this stuff. And, and then thankfully my chat was all like, yeah, we completely agree with you. And I was like, oh, I have the best fans ever.
Yeah, that helps.
I was like, my fans
yeah.
are human.
That helps. It helps.
Yeah.
That's good.
But damn, dude, it is like, yeah, it's, dude, it's 2020. I mean, the last time we really even sat down and talked game development stuff, I mean, the Switch wasn't even on the horizon. Virtual reality hadn't even hit consumer stuff yet.
Yeah.
And it's like now it's, like we have,
didn't exist.
yeah, we have the PlayStation 5 is on the horizon, the Series X is on the horizon, the Switch is still going strong. We've got the Index, the Vive Cosmos, the Vive Pro, the Rift S, the Quest. Actually it was one of the things, there was an article I was reading, I forget where it was, and they mentioned you because they were talking about how the Quest is so great. They were waiting in line with you somewhere and you pulled out your Quest and we're like, hey, let's play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Yep.
Which is one of the
with me.
Oh, nice.
I have it with me for most of my trips. Well, for most of the trips that I used to do, right? But I used to carry it with me everywhere. My main loadout was a laptop. I would have a PlayStation 4 in my suitcase in case I needed to play something. But I would always bring my Quest. I would always bring a camera. I would always bring my Switch.
Nice.
So no matter where I was, I could do whatever I needed to do. And the Quest is definitely, it's one of those things where you're at an event, especially if you're in places where VR just is a lot harder to get. It's magic, right? Like by now, it's still magic to me, I think, VR, but it's a different magic, right? Like now it's the magic of, wow, it works. The first time you try VR, it's the magic of like, what is happening? Seeing that in other people is really cool. It's just really fun.
The first time I ever got a chance to try VR was at PAX East, strangely enough, but 2014. And there was, at the time, the game was called Enemy Starfighter. And I had seen an article for it on a Giant Bomb, and I was just like, I absolutely need to see this game. And my friend Andy Benighi, who I believe is also a mutual friend of the two of us here, video games, it's a small world. If you're not if you're not a dick, you basically get to meet everybody you ever wanted to meet.
To a scary level.
It really, because it's nuts, because it's like you don't realize how interconnected a lot of these friendships are until you go somewhere and you go like, hey, Rami, this is my friend Alex, and he goes, oh, I know him, I watch his YouTube videos, and then I'm like,
we met in 2013. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, back at PAX Prime, we were in line for this thing, and it's just, it's nuts. But my first experience was this Enemy Starfighter. Like Andy got me in before the show floor officially opened, and we made a beeline. And it was an old DK1, and I'm just sitting there, and I put it on, and it was just, you're in awe.
Yeah,
it's the power of VR to put people in a place that they never thought they could ever be is second to none.
Yeah. No, I remember it was, I played a demo, it was a graphical demo, and it just spawned you on like a rainy street. And there was a car coming around the corner, and I just remember seeing the light in the corner of my eye and just turning my head towards it and just be like, whoa, that worked.
Um,
I just did that. Like right, like the translation in your mind from I want to turn that way with my head to okay, so I move the right stick. Like that disappearing. It's such a short step, right?
yeah,
Mentally. I'm like, okay, I want to turn to the right, so I'm gonna abstract that to turning to the right. Um, but just doing it with your head is like immediately a different world. It blew me away.
yeah. Actually, it's kind of interesting too. Liam just posted this in chat. Sorry, everybody watching, but I had to move my virtual monitor closer so I could read it. And he's pretty much agreeing with us in this. And he's also saying that he's been floored by the responses. He just posted a thread over the last few days asking people for their first big game thread or their first big game development memories. And it's just, the community on this is just so great because it's it's a young community but an old community too, because like
Yeah.
it would be the equivalent of if filmmakers today could still like rub elbows with Orson Welles,
Yeah.
because the first generation of game developers are still with us for to a large
Most
extent.
most of them, yeah.
I mean, and like my generation, which is technically ours. I'm just about like half a decade older than you, I believe. um we've seen like consumer video games from the beginning to the now, and
Yeah.
it's such a cool translation.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I remember it must have been like DICE 2013, 2014 was my first ever DICE. And um, I remember I was up for an award. So it must have been really ridiculous fishing. So 2014. Um, so ridiculous fishing was getting an award, and they do this thing where there's like a red carpet thing. It's kind of wild. Dice is kind of wild.
Yeah.
They had this red carpet, and the press was at the red carpet, and they would let certain nominees for like the big prizes would get to walk the red carpet alone, and then notable attendees and smaller award winners would get paired up. And I ended up getting paired up with Warren Spector. Now, Warren is like childhood hero of mine, right?
Yeah.
Like all of his old work, all of his modern work, all of that is just like I remember seeing his name. I remember using a cheat code that was "I am Warren," right? And in Deus Ex, if you use that cheat code, all electronics around you would explode because apparently, while developing it, every time Warren came by to check on the game, something would break, right? So they put that in the game as a cheat code. It was actually the first thing I told him. I'm like, I used to cheat with your game. He's like, excuse me? I'm like, no, in Deus Ex. He's like, oh right, yeah, that one. Um, and he's just like the kindest human. He's a little grumpy in a good way, uh, but it's nice because you know what you were talking about earlier, where there's this. We still have our heroes here. It's cool to see that our heroes had different views on where this industry would go and how it would evolve, right? And Warren was, um, and is a very firm believer in this evolution of how we tell stories in games, right? How the power that has gone, in our reality has gone towards graphics and stuff like that. How that could have been put towards evolving new narrative building blocks. And so he's always a little grumpy about where the games industry is. I feel because it's not where he thought it would go, but he still loves games. Like it's very clear that he just loves the medium and he loves the potential and he still believes in that dream. But it's so funny to see somebody who just like fundamentally disagreed with how the medium evolved, but still wants to be part of it. Um, it's just it's just incredible that we can just sit down and talk,
Yeah.
right? Have you ever met somebody? I met this person also 4 or 5 years ago. I met this person. He was a programmer, a really good programmer in the 70s, like the 1970s,
Yeah.
and then he just quit. He just quit computers. He now like breeds dogs or something. I don't know what he's doing.
That's a weird change.
Odd story. I don't know exactly what happened there, but this really good Dutch programmer made a bunch of games, some that were super impressive because they were really big and they used all these tricks like self-modifying code and stuff like that. Um, and he came out, the one of the community leaders in the Netherlands, Matthijs Dierks, who also ran the national games magazine that we have here, games industry magazine that we have here. He managed to convince this guy to come out of retirement for one talk and to just do a talk about game development. It was literally like listening to like an alien, right?
Oh,
Like the movie Arrival, like that was what it felt like. Just you're listening, and the stuff he was talking about, literally no idea. Never, literally no idea. I had never seen or heard anything like this.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
it was cool because he also had no idea what I was talking about.
I mean, the technology from the 1970s to 5, 6 years ago is just, it's not even orders of magnitude in difference. It's almost like it's an entirely different line of thought and creation.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like it's mind blowing. I mean, it's back in the 60s and the 70s, this idea of Moore's law and computational power growing at an exponential rate is just this crazy idea that people could look at and think about from an intellectual perspective and see the bell curve and be like, oh yeah, I totally get it. But to then see it happen
yeah.
is insane. And just real quick here, just thank you everybody for the new follows in here, and then also to Cypher of Tear, Tanya, thank you for the host as well. But like, oh my god, Thunder, I love you, I miss you, come back. He was Thundercast was also at the Rami ruined my New England clam chowder event. I met a lot of people that day. That was just nuts. Oh, my two sweet boys. Oh, we miss you, buddy. I was supposed to hang out with him back in 2014, but
That's the
then
most
that
industry story.
yeah, I was supposed to go hang out with him, but then some crazy stuff happened in Chicago, and we didn't get to go to QuakeCon, and that is like one of my great regrets.
And now it's 2020.
Yeah, which I was actually, funny enough, segues into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. Like, dude, this year sucks.
This year sucks so bad.
Like, we don't get any shows. It's like, like I'm not in a position where I was going to be able to like really attend any shows. Like, I was maybe going to be able to hit PAX West or like PAX South, but now it's like it doesn't matter.
I would be shocked if PAX South happens.
Dude,
That's January next year.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if like anything happens within the next 16 months.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it depends on whether we get a vaccine or whether like stuff gets worse, I guess.
Hey,
I don't know. It's a strange year. I think the best so far, the best thing I've read or consumed related to this is the XKCD comic about pasta. Have you seen that one?
No. There's so much internet to try and consume in a day.
Yeah. The XKCD strip about pasta. It's a comic, and it was just it's a bunch of viruses having a little chat about how the human antibodies are like the worst thing because they tried to hug them and then they die. But that they keep evolving new ways, and they finally found a way to like really get to us. But now we have started to like isolate ourselves and eating pasta alone and just to take care of each other. And it kind of ends with, and it seems like they're very stubborn. Like they can't hold this out forever. And it's like, no, they seem pretty stubborn about it. And they have a lot of pasta. And I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Like I I just appreciate that so much of humanity is really trying to be good towards each other and is really like limiting their own being, their own life, their own ability to see friends and be in contact with others, just to keep each other safe. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of lovely.
I
But
think
that
what
photo of Mecca being empty, like, still blows my mind as a Muslim.
dude, when you posted that on Twitter, clearly I've never been, but all my history books always used to show these huge tableaus of Mecca in the middle of just anything, and it's
Yeah.
never empty.
Nope. It's been empty a few times in its history, but I always say if Hollywood would be run by Muslims, every zombie movie would start with a shot of Mecca empty.
That
Right?
would
It's like
be
it is as poignant to me as like a shot of New York completely empty with nobody on the streets whatsoever.
which
Right? It's
is
just like
weird because we know that wouldn't happen. Even in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, New Yorkers would be out there with baseball bats with nails in it, still
true.
doing their normal thing.
True. Uh, that's how you get a cab, I think.
Yeah.
But but that's the way that image, like, it was like a punch, it was a gut punch. I have literally never considered um I've never considered that that would be a thing I would see, right? Mecca empty. I I don't know. This year feels like maybe it's just our generation. I don't know if anybody else's generation, but like sort of this generation of people that's now 30 to 40 years old. We've just every decade of our lives has had like major historical events, right? There's not
Yeah.
been like maybe every half a decade has had a major event, whether it's like the internet coming up or world politics changing with
Berlin Wall. I mean,
Berlin Wall, 9/11, the wars. You know, so much is changing all the time. Global recessions here, there, um, and now coronavirus. Like, I think we've had enough. Like, it's kind of cool that we get to see so much history because my grandma, she was 99, bless her soul, when she passed. She had like a story in 1924 and then a story in 1940, right, during the war, during the Second World War, and then another story in like the 1970s. And that was kind of like the big things that happened in our life.
yeah.
That was three in a life of 99 years. We're just sitting here and it's like, when are we due for like the next like history book shattering event?
I was tweeted this morning. It's that I wish that we had a time machine because I want to go back in time to the person who coined the phrase "May you live in interesting times" and punch him in the face. Because I'm done. I'm done. Because, like as you said, we have seen
I've seen
so
enough. That's good.
much. Like, can we just chill? But at the
Yeah,
same time, because we have seen so many of these crazy events, and several of them actually being very positive events, or at least potentially positive events, with the internet and the rise of internet culture, we're also at this wonderful place where we're kind of set to thrive in these environments too.
yeah,
Like I'm very sad to be stuck at home where I don't get to see my friends and stuff, but at the same time I can shoot you an email and here we are
well,
broadcasting live on the internet talking to people about what the video game industry was like 50 years ago.
yeah. I have to say, I don't think I would have been as stable mentally if it wasn't for like Animal Crossing and video games and voice calls or video calls.
I
Right?
gotta
It's still
say it's been Destiny 2 for me.
it's a good place to be as well.
Yeah.
I skipped out on this season. Season looks fine, and I love the narrative start of it, but I burned out on it a little pretty early on. So I just said, okay, next season I'll be back. I'll come back to like watch the fireworks when the season ends.
Yeah,
But
whenever and when year 3 rolls around too.
Yeah, I'll be around. I'll be playing. I'm not gonna quit Destiny, but this
Oh no.
season was a little too much for me.
Yeah. No, I have not been having fun with this season. But I will say that we're like accidentally hitting all of these points I wanted to talk to you about. Uh, uh, because you're a fan of Destiny as well,
I
which I
am.
I appreciate because I feel like we are few and far between. Um, but I feel like that's just not accurate because like you go somewhere and you go, "Hey, I like Destiny," and then like five people come out of like the corners of the room who've just been waiting for somebody to say it, and
Yeah,
they're all like,
say it. Say the magic words.
"Yo, I like Destiny too,"
Yeah.
And yesterday in the Bungie update, they were all said they were bringing power level caps to items, and I was so happy. Like, don't
It's
get me wrong. I'm going to be sad that I'm going to have to put my recluse away, but at the same time, it means that I get to fall in love with a new item.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because the Destiny community has grown so big and with so many ways of playing that no matter what they do, they're going to piss people off. Um, I'm I'm pretty excited for the changes. Like they needed to do something.
Yeah.
I've been using the same hammerhead for like what a year and a half. It's about time that they make me play something else. And I know a lot of people hate that because they love having their weapons and their shinies and the stories attached to it. And maybe Destiny needs to be a little more aware of, when they say, "Oh, we want every weapon to have a story."
Yeah.
Well, you don't want every story to end with, and then it became obsolete, right? So they have to figure out a little bit of how to play with that and how to mess with that. But
But at the
uh,
same token, every story ends,
yeah,
even the Wheel of Time.
yeah, but you would still prefer not to have it end with, and then it became obsolete, I think.
True.
So
But I
I
mean,
think that's kind of where they have to go now is how do you make sure that that's not how every story ends?
give it up, let it go out in a blaze of glory.
I mean, blow up the tower was their previous solution, and that worked okay, I guess.
Well, I mean, we do have the coming darkness, so that
Oh
kind of
boy,
gives
I'm
them.
excited for that.
Yeah, that dude. My favorite part of Destiny 2 was the after the credits sequence when the Traveler's power wave went out and illuminated the pyramid ships, and I was just like, "Oh, this
Oh
gonna
boy,
be good."
yeah. And it's
And
nice that they took like a nice 2 years to actually get there.
yeah, and like this
Right.
is one of the things I really appreciate about Destiny is that so many games, for the most part, just feed us the story.
Mhm.
Um, but Destiny doesn't.
You
It
kind of
treats it
do.
like it's a novel, and it's it leaves things purposefully vague so people can kind of come up with their own theories and just ideas on it.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to like go full my name is Bife here, you can find those answers. I love that guy's
I love
channel.
Vive. He's great. I
i
once did a raid with him, and it was one of the most fun times I've had doing a raid
i
boss.
I wish he played on PC because I would be like, yo, Bife, be my raid buddy.
Yeah.
Like he's
No,
he's on my list of people I would love to have sitting in that chair.
he's exactly as kind as you would imagine.
Well, we've
Uh,
talked back and forth on Twitter a few times, and I've been, really pleased with the conversation because, like, dude, he's a smart kid.
he is, really is. Um, and but also just it's one thing to be smart. It's another way to be able to be smart in a way that invites other people in, right?
Yeah,
That's a skill. That's a very hard skill. Finding that balance of being uh, incredibly smart, incredibly knowledgeable, but not feeling like you're condescending or like calling people out for lack of knowledge. Like Bife has figured out a way to be very smart in a very kind way,
yeah.
and
It
I
is a
wish more
very
people had
fine
that
line.
skill. It is incredibly fine.
As a
He walks
person
that way.
who walks that line every day and generally falls off into the dickishness territory of it, like it's razor thin.
It's tough. He manages to walk it like he's walked it all his life. It's incredibly impressive to see,
Well, I
and
think
it's
one
fun.
of the best things about his videos too is that he always opens it up at the end with that question of what do you think? And
Yeah.
this very open question that invites a conversation and he never backs away from it.
Nope. Yeah, it's
like you
great.
could, like more often than not, I just send him a tweet after a new video and I go, yo, your video was great. But, how many
Yeah,
other people do you see who pop in his comment section or hop in his mentions and are like, hey, I appreciate your theory, but what if X?
yeah,
And then they
yeah,
go down that rabbit hole. And it's like whole videos could be made of the rabbit holes he goes down with random mentions on Twitter.
yeah.
But, and
Yeah, you're
Tanya,
right.
thank you
The
for joining us. And we'll see you next time. And oh no, you didn't say that. I'm sorry. I'm reading in this screen is not very good for reading. But yes, we absolutely should. And then we also wanted to play some Ghost Recon Breakpoint since they added all of the options to make it more Ghost Recon-y, which I'm super down for as well. But yeah, like
the
yeah,
yeah, the darkness ships, right? Like I just remember seeing
so
that
good.
moment for me is like it was very Mass Effect. Like let's be honest, that moment is like full on Mass Effect. It's full on Mass Effect 2. Uh, I love Mass Effect. So for me to just sit there and to be like, "Yo, I know what's about to go down, and it's gonna go down," was
Rami,
like
I don't know if you
great.
know this about me, but I have the Normandy SR1 tattooed on my leg.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
did I know that? I don't think I knew that.
No, because that was I got that in 2016.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I didn't know that.
So yeah, like Mass
The
Effect is
the
is is my
SR1, we're
jam.
not going SR2.
No, I love the SR2, don't get me wrong, but the SR1 is like it's like the Mark V Halo armor. Like the Mark
Yeah,
V is always how the Chief is going to look to me. The SR1 Normandy is how the Normandy always looks to me. And it
yeah.
is the full ship, not just the serial number. It's on a Starfield. It's got like it's if you go to my Instagram, which is the same as the channel name, it's far enough back there and stuff, but it's also one of those things I'll probably also just post again anyway. Because I'm a collector of like silly tattoos. Um, so like I have a pangolin because those things are great. Um, I have a mashup of Hello Kitty and Predator because
Wait, what? Excuse me?
it's a Hello Kitty Predator mashup. I call it Hello Predator.
I there are so many ways you could combine those two that I can't quite figure out which one has happened.
It's a Predator in the Hello Kitty drawing style,
Oh
and it
my
has the
god.
little pink bow on its helmet.
You gotta be that's amazing.
Oh, I'll send you the picture.
Oh yeah, 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 please.
Yeah, because it's just because I love tattooing, and then like completely separate conversation, but like tattooing technology in the last 20 years has just so great.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
I've never had a tattoo, but it is fascinating to me to watch.
yeah,
Just like
and there's so many. Yeah, I could talk about this forever, but we don't have forever, unfortunately. I'm sure we had like you're actually relatively important and probably have things to do. And I
you
imagine,
I will say you are my last thing for today. The only thing I have is in 2 hours I need to be eating breakfast, or I won't be
okay.
eating all day.
I'm trying to look at what is my time here. Okay, it's just before 5 p.m. for me. I know that in roughly an hour I need to definitely be gone because I'm supposed to go get fish fry with Misty, which is fish and chips for the uninitiated. But they just call it fish fry out here. It's like a big Midwest tradition because they are really big into like Lent.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Dude, I don't question it, man. Like fish and
No,
chips,
just
I'm down.
honestly, good food. I will eat it for whatever reason.
And especially right now, being able to help support a local business as well. Like, yeah,
It
I'm all
it
over it.
matters. Yeah, I'm trying to when I go out, I try to order from like local places because not a lot has opened in the Netherlands yet. I mean, everything is technically open, but you're still kind of recommended to not go outside. So it's kind of a weird. We're kind of in that weird middle spot.
Yeah.
It's not quite locked. We never super locked down. We did a thing called intelligent lockdown, which is the Dutch's way to be like. It's like the Dutch's humble brag.
Yeah. As you've explained in conversations that I have been present for, if not always necessarily a part of, the Dutch appear to be the champions of the humble brag.
Yes, incredibly good at it. Um, We always tend to, but it's important to the Dutch. Like they like to feel smart, right? And like, admittedly, the Dutch are generally pretty smart, like well educated,
They've
good.
got a good track record.
We've done some good stuff.
I mean, you managed to build a country below sea level. That's pretty amazing.
I mean, I don't know if that's smart per se.
I'm not saying it's particularly smart, but it is amazing.
Impressive. Yeah.
You know, yeah.
But yeah, the Dutch like to feel smart. So I think calling it an intelligent lockdown was sort of a PR win, because a lot of Dutch people just went like, okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, we did safer at home in Wisconsin, which felt very nice because everybody else was doing shelter in place, which felt like an active shooter drill.
Yeah, that sounds like that's like duck and cover. I
Yeah.
don't think that's not what I want to hear.
No, safer at home, much better idea.
Yeah.
But we've started to open up a little bit. Like, of course, America's had the whole essential employees thing, which, you know, great idea, excellent. Like, we absolutely need police officers and firemen or fire persons, I guess I should say, and hospital workers, you know, like, yeah. But we've also been stretching what essential means.
Yeah.
And in some instances on it, yeah, GameStop, Starbucks. There are a few stretches of the word which I totally support. Like my Starbucks is next door to a local bookstore called Boswell Book Company, and they're still open for like pickup and special orders and mail orders. And I feel that's good because they're there for the betterment of society through education. You know, and like I feel that is an essential thing, but my Starbucks is not essential. And we just opened up last week, and I just told my boss yesterday that I don't feel safe because a bunch of Karens and Kevins have been coming in and demanding things and not really caring about the safety of their fellow human beings. And I'm just not going to come in for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of that where stores opened back up and then realized that people were being aggressive and then just shut down again. And I think that might actually be the healthiest way for things to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a strange time. It is interesting also to see, I don't know, from a sociology perspective, this is interesting because you can tell how certain messaging does and doesn't work, right? How certain ways of setting up society work towards the collective and other work towards the individual. And it's just kind of wild to see all these different because effectively every country is an experiment, right?
Yeah.
Seeing all these experiments dealing with a real life, like worst case scenario, is kind of wild. And I say that from like relative safety, obviously. But there is something to be said that we can hopefully learn from this and hopefully create some really significant change in our world, because going back to normal doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
No.
Right? We're going to have to go forward to a new normal.
Which, I mean, ultimately is what we should always be doing anyways.
Yeah, sometimes we're in a good status quo, right? But
yeah.
I mean, there's places where that's less true than others. The Netherlands have been pretty stable and pretty good for a long while. I was okay with where we were, right? But that doesn't mean that this won't improve some stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to be moving forward, at least hopefully more moving towards a better place with this informing how to make change.
Yeah. It's also fun because a lot of stuff, France is in this weird position right now, for example, where obviously a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment has been sort of gaining ground around the West. And so face coverings were banned in a lot of countries to stop the hijab, and handshaking, refusing to shake hands with people, has also been frowned upon a lot. And now it's just what everybody has to do.
Yeah,
but in France, they didn't get rid of the law that prohibits face coverings, so technically you are now finable if you're not wearing face covering, but also you're finable if you are wearing face covering.
Well, there was a headline I saw this morning as I was getting everything ready today of the French were saying that face coverings are okay, but religious face coverings are not.
Yeah, and I was they're figuring it out.
Like it's this will be like the last of like the air quotes political stuff before we get back to talking about games and fun things.
Video games.
But the French, for a company that or a country that really seems to like the idea of freedom and personal expression and stuff, and freedom of religion, really has a problem with people expressing themselves with their religion.
Yep.
Just
Yeah, it's
saying.
hard. Like the thing I've learned, and this is sort of a thing I've learned over my years of diversity work, is that a lot of things that people want are not necessarily compatible. Like we really want to believe that the world can be this happy place where everybody can express themselves to the fullest, but the reality of existence is that that is doable if you're looking at a somewhat homogenous group,
Yeah.
right? If you're looking at Americans or like US folks, there should be a way to make that a coherent whole, because there's a shared culture, there's a shared language, there's a shared worldview. And even though there's a lot of varied experiences within the United States, there's enough that ties it together. But as soon as you start going like, okay, let's try to mesh together the reality of a US person and a Saudi person, like there's so little touching points that making them mesh becomes impossible. So when you say freedom, there's a there's a tough paradox in freedom, in that you can say, well, do the things that don't harm others, right? But if you don't even agree what harm means, then how are you going to get to any like meaningful or constructive place? So I think that's what's happening in France. I do genuinely believe that the French believe in liberté and égalité and fraternité. Like,
As they love to say.
yeah, I think those are truly values of the French. It's just they mean the French version of it.
Yeah.
Right.
I personally want to think that the people that stood and resisted the Nazis will figure their stuff out.
I hope so.
Dude, like
It's a little, it's a
that's
little
one thing.
depressing.
Like I'm not gonna lie. As an American, I've made my fair share of French jokes, and then as an American who grew up in my particular brand of upbringing, I made my fair share of French army jokes.
Yeah, I
But when
mean,
you really look at the history of it, man, we owe the French people a lot.
we do. We do.
And they were like, dude, I'm not going to be making fun of a Frenchman anytime soon unless
Nope.
they do something that's worth making fun of, like, like walking into a bar or.
Yeah. The French are interesting. It's an incredibly interesting country. It's a very proud country, similar to the UK.
Which could
But
explain a bit why they're so,
at odds.
at
Yeah.
odds.
But I think that the funny thing is that the UK obviously has English, which makes their worldview just more powerful than the French one, because
Yeah.
it's easier to spread. So um, it's just funny seeing two countries with very similar attitudes towards the world, but with different circumstances, and how that reflects on how people talk about those countries. It's funny. The world is an interesting place, though.
Yeah. There's a quick question in chat. Specifically, I grew up in the great state of Maryland. Since then, I've moved around a lot. But I love my state of Maryland, even though I also am never going to go back. But all right, we've done enough pontificating of
The world.
There's really two last things I want to touch on. One that we're going to do last. This is effectively like the fourth or fifth iteration of this show. It started as an audio podcast. I did 2 episodes of it, and then that stopped. And then the many iterations of this show before it became this. And the thing I love to do is this thing called the 5 questions, at which point I ask you 5 completely random questions that have really nothing to do with what we were talking about.
All right.
And then, but the other one too is, and this is the coolest thing, like, dude, you have done some amazing things. Like, I mean, Nuclear Throne is great. I love Ridiculous Fishing. It has lived on my phone since I discovered it.
Thank you.
And you give amazing talks. At least a couple of them are still in my, I still have bookmarked for when I like need to like pick me up or something.
Thank you.
Well, dude, if you stop giving good talks, I'll stop telling you they're good. But Luftrausers is again mentioned in the chat, which unfortunately I haven't played. Sorry, Rami. I'm also
It's okay.
terrible at Nuclear Throne. Um,
So am I. I'm
but
pretty bad at my own games.
the coolest thing that you've done in recent memory is introducing your mother to video games.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
watching her play Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 7 Remake now, Shadow of the Colossus. Like, dude, how?
Yeah. I don't like. I remember. So I was traveling a lot, right, before, and I would come back, and I would always have like a weekend to go visit my mom and dad, and I would come home, and we talk about all the things that happened on my trip, and
Yeah.
then night was over. I would go home. Um, but one time I was visiting mom, and I said something like, this must have been 2016 or 2017. I said something like, "Oh yeah, I was visiting Phil," and my mom just go like, "Oh, which Phil?" I'm like, "Tipitowski," and she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, Chicago, right?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "How's after that?" I'm like, "How do you know all this stuff?" Um, and she, after some insistent like questioning, she admitted that she'd been reading games news for the past like 3 or 4 years, so
Huh.
we could get to just like chatting a bit faster when I would be home, so I wouldn't have to explain everything. um so I started just kind of like asking her stuff like, what other Phils do you know? She's like, oh yeah, there's Phil Fish, there's Phil Spencer, he's with Xbox, I think. And I'm just like, what? Excuse me? Like, how do you know all this stuff? Um,
Brief
so eventually,
aside, if I ever make it to the Netherlands, I just like want to meet your mom. She seems really cool.
she is very
Just saying.
cool. So she eventually I just go like, but wait, so you know all this stuff, but you've never played a video game? And she's like, no, no, I don't think that's for me. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, if you know this much, we're at least gonna try, right? So I brought her my old Xbox, and we sat down and we talked a bit about like what kind of stuff she likes in media, and I really quickly latched on to the idea that my mom, when I was younger, every time a Lord of the Rings movie would come out, we would go to the cinema, right? We would go watch them, and my mom loves those movies, and I tried to think of what games have a sort of Lord of the Ring-esque story to them, of like a group of random kids effectively who get stuck in this big political struggle and then end up fighting basically like Satan or something, right?
I gotta say that my first thought would be Dragon Age Origins.
So we looked at Dragon Age. I actually did, um, but it's a lot. That's not an easy game. There's a
No.
lot going on. And then I remember that I had just finished Final Fantasy 15, and that the main thing I remember is that most of the game I'm just holding down a button, right? Like you're holding down the attack button or you're holding down the defend button. And yeah, there's some strategy, but I remember that there was an easy mode, so I booted it up. I started in easy mode, and I realized that there just barely is game over. It's almost impossible to game over in Final Fantasy 15 if you put it on easy. So I went to mom and I said, "Okay, listen, how about Final Fantasy 15?" And she was like, "I don't know. Is that good?" I'm like, I guess. So we booted it up. I told her it's a little bit like Lord of the Rings. And for the next 3 weeks, I visited her like 3 times a week to help her with the controls, right? And I made a rule. I said, I'm never going to touch the controller. Like if you're playing, you're playing. But if you're going to let me run through things, you're never gonna learn, right?
Yeah.
So I just sat there and I just stayed the most patient I could be about things, right? So she started with just the left stick. She couldn't do both sticks at once, so she would move the left stick, and then when she got to a place, she would turn the right stick and then move the left stick again. And she would use one hand. She would hold the controller with the one hand and then move the stick with sort of like a claw-like motion with her thumb and her index finger.
Yeah.
Um, and then she would panic if when the camera gets stuck between the character and a wall,
Yeah.
and it like clips forward through the character so you can still see.
Yeah.
My
Or
mom
when
would
it
just go
clips
like,
back through a wall and you
yeah.
can't see.
My mom would just go like, where did I go? I'm like, no, you're still there, the camera. And it took months to get her over that first hop. And I would just keep visiting. And eventually I got a little annoyed during Final Fantasy, um, having no way to just watch her play. So after she beat it, Final Fantasy 15 on easy, which is basically just brute forcing it, right? Um, I switched it out for a PlayStation because the PlayStation has share play.
Yeah.
And then from there on, every next game we selected was always based on the thing in Final Fantasy, in the previous game that I thought she could stand to learn from. So Final Fantasy 15, she did none of the side quests. She super role played it. She's the crown prince of Insomnia. She's not going to grab onions for a farmer, right? And it makes total sense, but also that's not how video game. So, so then we did Dragon Age Inquisition because in that game, narratively, it makes sense to do all the side quests, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then she did that, but she always spammed the same attack. So I said, okay, let's do Persona 5 because it's turn based. So you really have to think about what kind of attacks you're using. And then slowly but certainly, every time we sort of narrowed down the missing parts of her gaming literacy to the point where by now she can read gaming. Right, it's a language, and she speaks it. She was playing just before I hopped on this, um, and um, she arrived at a train station in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and she had to go to the right. And her first response was to turn left and see if there was an item there. Right, and I was
That's
so
good
proud.
teaching.
I'm so proud that
Yeah.
that's just the thing she does now.
There's actually we have a question in chat similar on because that's solid teaching right there. But how did you teach her 3D aim on a controller? Because they've been trying to teach their mom how to play Mario 64 for 20 years, and I assume to no avail.
So the trick I found, the thing that I'm very fortunate with Final Fantasy 15 is that so the things you have to avoid is you have to avoid frustration because it very quickly creates a feeling of this is not for me, right? Platformers are probably the most frustrating genre in the world to not have full control over your movement because you see the thingy, you know you want to get the character on the thingy, you probably can't even fully read depth in games yet. Um, and then you have to manipulate the sticks rapidly throughout a jump. It's incredibly hard to do that in 3D, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 3D platformers are we've been
they're
doing
hard.
them now for over 20 years and it's still not easy.
No, right? Final Fantasy, the benefit I had with that is that there's one part where you have to platform and it's optional. But beyond that, there's no way you can kind of fall off the level. And it's large open spaces, very few obstacles most of the time. So she really had a lot of time to just like feel how the stick moves, to just run around, to just get a feeling for moving. She didn't learn aiming though until probably Shadow of the Colossus, which was like her 10th game or her 9th game. Up until that point, every game we had her play was with auto aim on, and we try to focus on hack and slash or action games that didn't require you to manually aim.
Yeah.
So we tried Destiny for a bit, and it was a disaster.
Oh,
Right?
I saw some tweets about that.
Yeah, I mean, she enjoyed it. She enjoyed being in that world, but having to aim at a thing that moves is hard.
Yeah.
And Shadow of the Colossus was nice because most of the targets you have to shoot at are incredibly slow.
Yeah.
Right? Not until later on in the game. And then recently she did Horizon Zero Dawn, and now she's pulling off some Drake shots with her bow and arrow, right?
Nice.
So it seems that the main trick
Bye, Tanya.
is to create. Oh, bye, Tanya.
So I was trying to find a way to like work that in, and I was just like, real quick.
The main trick I found is just to find spaces in which you're safe to fuck up. and that was really it. That was the main thing. That was what worked for mom. And as soon as she played one game, like the way she described it, and it lingers in my head. But the way she described it is as I gained a new world, right? And as soon as she understood that benefit, it was easier for her to push through with frustration because
Yeah.
now she knows what it's for. She knows that at the end, she's gonna have um, a character she cares for, like Noctis, and friends from the game that she appreciates, like Prompto and Gladio, and she'll have seen a world with beauty and music and all these moments that she remembers. Um, when you know the benefit of gaming, it's easier to deal with the frustrations of it,
Oh
right?
my God, you got to introduce her to Mass Effect. If only, like, if she loves those side characters, she's gonna lose her mind for, you know.
It's Final Fantasy VII is our current one. I think maybe Mass Effect might be a recommendation, but I think I would need a HD remaster before I can convince her.
Well, I mean, I would always recommend starting it too. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the crap out of the first game, but
I
it's
think,
like the controls are just so
yeah. No, I get.
bad.
I think I think the trick is going to be we're going to wait for that HD remaster with that one, and then
Yeah.
she can just play all three. I don't know what's next though. I have to admit we're kind of running out of like big notable games for mom to play.
I can
Uh,
think of a few games not to recommend, but that's not particularly helpful.
yeah, Nuclear Throne seems like a bad choice.
Yeah, that actually wasn't even on my list, but yeah, I'll add
Yeah, it's
it.
people keep recommending that one. And Journey. People keep saying Journey, and I still don't want to give mom a platformer. Even after all this time.
I'm trying to think. Like, in a weird way, I would say like something like Gone Home or Firewatch would be kind of an interesting take
Firewatch could be interesting.
because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are kind of lukewarm to Firewatch, but I played it in one sitting and I absolutely adored it.
It was good. Yeah, it was an
Um,
interesting game. I think the thing that I like about Firewatch is that it is relatively explicit about its goals. Like it says this is what's up right now. While Gone Home does that a little less. It's more of an exploratory game.
yeah.
Mom just needs objectives.
Okay.
Like this entire conversation that's happening on Twitter right now, where people are like, "Oh, if I could do my game without waypoints, I would do it without waypoints." I'm like, you would lose my mom instantly because mom just needs she needs a thing on the map. She needs
Yeah.
like, oh, go here, and if she can see where to go, then she will do it, and she will
Yeah.
enjoy it. She doesn't want to figure out what to do. She's got work. She has life. She figures out what to do all of her life.
Yeah.
She just wants to sit down and have the game tell her do this, and then do that, and then the skill comes from doing the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
We,
it's been such a joy,
good.
and it's been so nice to have this thing to talk about with mom. We call like every other day to catch up on what's happened in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Sometimes it's hard for her to keep track of what's happening. You know, when dialogue happens during combat,
Yeah.
she can't follow it. No way. Subtitles, no subtitles. Audio, no audio. It doesn't matter. It's too much. She just can't. Um, so every day or two, I'm actually playing Final Fantasy VII Remake again myself on hard mode and trying to keep up with where mom is. And when there's important information, I'll make a small note so that when me and mom call a few days later, I go like, "Oh, did you catch this? Did you catch this one? Did you catch this hint?" And I don't want to give it away, so I kind of poke at it, right? And only if she's missed something really important, I'll make mention of it.
Yeah.
But it's just so nice to like talk to her so much.
Yeah.
It's weird because I mean I guess I could without the games, but
But now
it's
you
a lot
have
of
that
fun to have
extra
this talk to
level
her.
of,
Yeah,
she has an appreciation of something that's very important in your life,
yeah,
and you now have this whole other language that you can speak with her.
yep. It's really cool. Plus, the
Yeah.
moment she apologized for turning off the computer without letting me get to a save point, that was very important to me.
Oh man, my sorry for that. Sorry guys, that was not an appropriate time for that sound effect. But uh My strategy was, because we lived in a ludicrously large house, I played on a TV in the basement that was 2 floors away from where my mother was likely to be. So that's how I avoided that.
my
But
my mom would never turn off the power to my computer though back in the days. Because I had an hour and a half, and then my siblings both had an hour and a half. But I always wanted to go first because I was impatient. But that meant that after me, like if I kept playing, that cut into my siblings' time. So my mom would always warn me 10 minutes from my hour and a half, and then at an hour and a half she'd warn me again, and then 10 minutes passed, my brother would come complaining, um, and then my mom eventually would just pull the plug. Right, it was 100% every time my fault, but there's a few times where I went like, "Oh, I just really need to get to the save point. I really need to get to the save point." She's like, "You're already like 7 minutes late." I'm like, "No, no, it's like 2 minutes out," and then she would pull the plug.
yeah,
And while playing Persona, she realized what that meant, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, I'm sure it was fair every time you did it, but also thank you."
yeah. Well, we've got time here for a couple questions from chat. So, guys, if you have any questions you want to ask Rami real quick, go ahead and throw them up in chat. We've got one here. At what point would your mother, play one, or at what point would she play one of your games, Rami? What would be the biggest obstacle to reaching that point?
I mean, she's played Ridiculous Fishing. Um, like she's played that. She played it when it came out, actually. Um, but Ridiculous Fishing is kind of a strange one because that was meant to be a very accessible game, while normally Flamberg games are a little more arcade style, right? Um, I honestly think that the main problems with most indie games, including our own, is that the goals are extremely implicit. Like we don't say like do this or do that. We don't really explain a lot of stuff. We expect a certain level of gaming literacy from our audience, and um, we don't really allow people to get to that level of literacy through our games. We have other games handle that, right? Our if you want to play our indie games, you better have played a lot of video games. And um, it kind of it's kind of sad, and I want to do better. But it's also abundantly clear to me that that is a function of indie games, right? It's like it's advanced reading, effectively.
Yeah.
Um, so finding a good balance between the two is a challenge, and it's an interesting challenge. For now, I don't think there's any game of mine that I would like my mom to play. The Super Crate Box would be hell for her. Nuclear Throne, same thing. Luftrausers might be interesting, but I just can't see how she would get joy out of that. My mom likes the worlds, right? She likes the characters in the worlds, and it's not what Flamby really does. Um, so I don't know. Maybe mom will just not play a game of mine, and she will just enjoy the rest of the medium. But it's kind of just how things are, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Next question. When are you going to get her into game dev?
So when we did momversusgames.com, she actually sat next to me as I coded that website. And I just went like, okay, well, now you can see how sort of like the other side of stuff works, right? When you try to create something out of nothing with computers. Um, and she was just baffled by the amount of things you have to think about, right? And the amount of like moving parts, and the amount of like the ease at which something breaks completely. And she was just like, this is your work. I'm like, well, no, this is web design. It's also similar, but games have entire separate layers of stuff that apply to them. And she just sat there and she's like, this is magic. I'm like, well, a little. Yeah, fair. Um, but it was fun because she really went like that website was designed by mom.
Huh.
She I came up with like the basic skeleton of how it would work, but she came up with like how it would look, and all the margins and paddings are mom. The choice of fonts is mom. The footer and the header and like how everything looks is hers. Um, but she would go like, "Oh, can we move this a little to the left?" And I'd go like, "Well, if we move that margin, then probably everything is going to collapse. Let me see." And then everything would collapse, and she'd be like, "I just wanted to move the thing to the left." I'm like, I know. It's just if you add up these numbers and that number, then she's like, "What?" So she's had a glimpse at the reality of game development, and I think her like what was probably the best response you could have to game development anyway. So
It sounds like me talking to a programmer about anything.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Uh,
Yeah.
let's see. Rami, is there a reason beyond or behind Vlambeer having low staff count that you don't or I think this question is asking: is there a reason behind having have a low staff count with Vlambeer, and is that responsible for why you may or may not do more technically challenging, example 3D games?
Oh yeah, no. The reason we don't Flamber's art style actually follows from the functionality of our games. We really like our games to be very tight, small arcade experiences. But what we mostly like about those arcade experiences is that very, um, they read very well, right? You can, like, it's also the reason we don't do illustration as a style because this illustration is fuzzy. While pixel art is binary, like two pixels are either overlapping or they're not overlapping, and there's not really an in between. It's not like not quite overlapping. Um, we like that readability. So most of our games actually start from there. Like we just like how do these things touch or barely touch or not touch at all? But we don't want the like how can we see whether these things are touching, which is a very true problem in 3D, right? Or are these things actually intersecting? Which, yeah, you can do in 3D. You can actually calculate whether things are touching, but you usually have to do so much fuzzy nonsense to make it feel right instead of just being right, right? Your hitbox is a little bigger or a little smaller.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Rami.
Basically, what I'm saying
None
is
whatsoever as my hand clips into my head.
nice. Basically, the what I'm trying to say is when you do the art style that Flambeer does, that is probably the optimal art style for games like Flambeer makes, right? And any other art style that we've tried has always come with compromises for the type of gameplay that we pursue, and that's kind of why we end up doing 2D games. We could do 3D games. We've actually prototyped some 3D games. And we released one which still used pixel art, but Gun Gods was technically in the 3D space. But in the end, like the gameplay we make, then like in Gun Gods, we had to make so many compromises to how things work. Like these bullets are hit scan, and we don't like hit scan. We like slow bullets. Um, like the compromises are just too big for us, so we just end up going back to that 2D style every time.
Well, if you ever need a particularly mediocre 3D artist, I know a guy. Let's see.
Did you model all of this?
No, so I modeled the head. This is mine.
Oh,
It's inspired by a whole bunch of different things, including another piece by Vlad, who did that back there. But everything else here are from asset packs that I picked up on the Unreal Marketplace. Because I really liked the style that they did, and I kind of wanted to go for like this kind of lo-fi style. And Hoaxfish, thank you for the follow. God, this is the first time I've done this show with a guest, so I've got to kind of like find that rhythm of doing the streamer thing while also doing the interviewer thing. And it's much more fun, like doing it in this style than just in the YouTube style. So, yeah,
it's nice. Live interaction is always fun.
And there's always so many more things that can go wrong in a live show than a pre-recorded one.
Putting the audio on.
You shut up. No, no. The funny thing is if you go back and you look at the VODs for this, my last two shows didn't even have video.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I messed that one up real good.
I guess audio is not having the audio is a good step forward.
Well, yeah, it was funny because it's like I mean I don't get like a huge viewer count, and I don't do this for the viewer count. I do it for the fun.
Yeah,
And when I was looking at my count and it was like one, I was like, dude, I at least usually pull four,
yeah, yeah.
and because on my screen it's all showing because Streamlabs is of course showing all of the sources, not necessarily what is representative of the actual stream.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just really just yeah, I just completely
Setup
missed
for
that.
this, the setup for this must be incredibly intense.
uh it's easier than you would think, but harder than I'm making it sound.
I mean, easier than I would think. Is I think this is hard. So
Well, I mean, the funny thing is like we can sit here all day and like what I will think is easy is going to be something that you might think is difficult, and vice versa. Like you're sitting
true.
here talking about like building a website, and I'm just like, you didn't just get somebody's like sponsor code for Squarespace, you know?
Okay, fair, 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 fair.
But like for me it's as we were saying earlier, it's like I've spent a fair bit of time over the last few years figuring out how to do this because I was like, this is a cool idea and I want to figure out how to do it. Yeah, and thank you. I can't read your name very well, I'm sorry, but thank you for the follow. uh, Helidivol. Palatable. I'm saying this so horribly wrong. I'm sorry. I'm super American, and unless it's like French, I have no idea how to pronounce it. Uh, yeah. But real quick, yeah. So, like, I'm not gonna. This is crazy. Don't get me wrong. Um, but at the same time, it's like that crazy that you like doing.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean,
So like my list of stuff that I still need to get done for the show is astronomical. Like I spent some of today since I upgraded to the Index, but I still have my Vive, and you can hack your Vive wands to work as Vive trackers. And so I
uh,
was hacking those today so I could like run elbow kinematics, and I got like that kind of going, but while the elbow to the wrist was working, the elbow to the shoulder wasn't. So I was
okay.
like, yeah, so I wasn't cool with bringing it onto the show today, so you know. But like that's a feature like we want to get. I have a friend of mine who's a YouTuber who does Unreal Engine 4 tutorials, and we're
Yeah.
talking about getting like Twitch integration and stuff like that. So
Wow.
like we have plans, and so my thing is like my big thing is I want elbows. I want arms. I miss my arms. Where did they go? um and it's just seeing how the show develops and stuff too. It's We're gonna come up with all sorts of silly new things. um Bang for buck headset is the casual user. Oh, Oculus Quest, hands down.
Yeah. I have the
Yeah,
Quest. I love the Quest.
dude, I want a Quest. Like I'm sitting here and like I have a nice computer I built myself and all this stuff, and like the Index is without, in my humble opinion, it's the best headset on the market for power users. But
Yeah.
if I'm just going for overall value and stuff like that, like the Quest is without a doubt the best headset that a standard person
Yeah.
can get.
I
um
it because it does everything okay, right? You can use it standalone. You can hook it up to your computer via Oculus Link.
Yeah, and they
Uh,
just put an update out so you can link to a PC with any cable. It
yep.
doesn't have to be the special cable that you had to buy separately.
Yep. Yeah, it's wild.
Um,
The Quest is a remarkable value for. I've honestly, like, after this, I'm gonna go to my couch in my living room. I'm gonna put on the Quest. I'm gonna turn up Tetris Effect, and I'm gonna play 5 levels.
Additionally, the Quest has access to more games than a Steam VR native headset does. Because Oculus is the name of the game right now for VR.
It is.
uh Regardless, like Ford cars in America, it doesn't matter that like a Toyota truck is better. People are going to buy the Ford because they know it. That is not to say that the Ford itself is not good in the
No.
case of the Oculus and all the stuff, but because Oculus has the market share, they have their own like Apple style walled garden with things like Tetris Effect and Vader Immortal in there. And like, dude, oh, does it do Half-Life Alyx? That's a question I can't answer.
It does, but you have to use Oculus Link, so you would have to hook it up to a computer.
Dude, that game is so good.
It is very good.
Like we were talking earlier about the immersive quality of VR, and then also too with Warren Spector about storytelling in video games, and the strength to me of VR games is not going to be in just making shooters. It's going to be in making immersive experiences that are going to truly put us into the realm of novels, like novel games.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And
it's a different paradigm. You can't like.
I
think that's the thing that Alex really nailed, is that it's not it would never work without VR.
Yeah.
That's what sets it apart. Like most of the games that are out there, you could technically play without VR. It wouldn't always be the greatest, but you could. But like games like Beat Saber and Super Hot VR and Half-Life Alyx, where you play them and you're like, there's no way this would work.
Pistol Whip.
Pistol Whip, same thing.
Yeah, Pistol Whip is my jam, man.
But like the weird thing about Pistol Whip is Pistol Whip would mostly work with a mouse.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not really doing anything mechanically that you need VR for per se. It just feels better.
Yeah.
But Super Hot VR, like the way the like grabbing two weapons from the air at the same time and then spreading your arms and firing in both directions at once, you can't do that.
Yeah.
There's no way to do it.
No, there really isn't. But that said, though, I do love like, oh no, I've run out of bullets in Super Hot VR. Well, now I have a shield.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, dude. So we have covered a lot of just crazy topics.
Yep.
So I wish I had a good sound effect for this. So I'm just going to use this one, everybody. It's time for the 5 questions. All right, so here's the basic rules in the 5 questions. One last question. You got it in right under the wire. Real question: is 2 by 3 meters enough for Half-Life Alyx?
I think it is. I think it's 3 by 3.
Okay. All right. So take 2. Nope, wrong one. I gotta like mark these or somehow, but so much of this is also figuring out like ways to mark it where the camera can't see it. So like my microphone is right here. But I have due to the wonderful way video games render graphics, I have a plane right here in front of it that I can see as a visual reference for where I can put my hands where they're not a problem, but you can't because it's a one-dimensional object. So yeah, or specifically, it's a phenomenon known as backface culling, where game engines don't render the back faces of objects. So, hence why you can see through a wall that your camera clips through. The more you know. Sorry. That's like one of the, yeah. So, here we go.
I mean, it's true. All that you said is correct.
There we go. All right, now it's time for the 5 questions. All right, Rami, so these are 5 questions. I'm going to ask you to answer them as quickly as you possibly can. They are nonsensical in nature, and there is no such thing as a wrong answer unless there's a Star Wars question and you say anything but the TIE Interceptor is the best starfighter.
Okay.
Don't worry, that's not a question for you. All right. If Ramadan were a video game, which would it be and why?
Animal Crossing, because it's tied to real day and real time.
Okay. That's an excellent answer.
I actually had to think about this one a lot. Because I've been doing Iftar and Suhoor in Animal Crossing. Nice. And a bunch of newspapers have been asking about it. So I had to really think about why that works.
And, well, thank you for the compliment on my voice. That was directed at chat, not at you. But if you think my voice is great, that's also great, Rami.
I think your voice is great.
No. Well, thank you, Rob. No. Which video game should your mother absolutely not play?
Ooh, The Last of Us.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, because she would understand why people care for it, but she would hate playing it because there's so much direct violence against people,
Yeah.
and it's not mythological people. Like they're meant to be people like you and I.
Yeah.
I think she would just keep dying because she refuses to like kill anybody.
I got to be honest, I kind of thought you would go in the route of like Dark Souls or Bloodborne, but
I
uh,
honestly think
that's
she
a
might
great
enjoy
answer.
those more than Last of Us.
Well, yeah, it does have a really interesting world, and it is all pretty much mythological creatures of some form or other. I love those games. I will never beat them because I'm terrible at them.
I beat two of them.
That is two more than me.
Yeah, that's all. I've played all of them, but
Dude,
most of them after a while, I'm like, I get it. This is good. Now let's move on to something that doesn't make me hate my life.
yeah, Dark Souls 3 was the one that I got the furthest in. I got to Testicle Tree, and that's the point at which I couldn't do it. And I
Yeah.
loved every second of it.
Uh-huh.
I'm just bad at it. All right. Question number 3. You have had the horrible luck of being contracted to make a licensed mobile game. Which franchise would you be the least bummed out to work on?
Ooh, like an existing mobile franchise?
Or just like Marvel calls you up and says, "Hey, Rami, we've contracted you to do a game based on Doctor Strange and the Dimensions of Madness," or like something like that.
Gotta be niche.
Hmm?
Gotta be niche.
Yeah, it's got to be a recognizable brand.
For me or for everybody?
For everybody.
Okay, that's a little harder. There's this Egyptian television anime. I think in Japanese it's Captain Tsubasa. In Arabic it's called Captain Maggot, and I've always wanted to make a Captain Maggot video game.
I'm cool with
Uh,
that answer.
yeah, it's just super over. And I genuinely, when I learned that that is actually a Japanese television series, I was so sad because this is like a defining children's show for Arab kids.
Yeah.
And now, looking back at it, it's like it's pretty Japanese. You look at it and it's like signs are Japanese. Like all the characters have like Japanese like features. But I just grew up with all of them speaking Arabic, so as far as I knew, they were Egyptian.
Yeah,
Uh,
as an American growing up with Robotech and then just finding out that it was Macross and it wasn't American, like,
yeah, it blew my
what?
mind.
All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, I would like to make a Captain Maggot video game. So I love those NBA Jam and like the over the top sports games.
Yeah.
I would like to make one of those.
Dude, NBA Jam is
The greatest thing.
oh my god, yeah. I loved, like, that was one of those games growing up as a kid that we rented from the local video store so many times that my parents finally realized it was just cheaper to buy it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, question number 4. Ridiculous Fishing has been optioned for a movie. Who do you cast as the fisherman?
Oh boy, who becomes Billy? I mean, the problem with Billy is that Billy is supposed to, like, who would play like old sad man very well? I would just probably go find a random person on the street. I think that's genuinely my answer. I would find somebody on the street who could use the money to play the role. That has like dealt with a lot of shit in life, but has found a place to be like centered and calm. Because I think that's what the game ultimately is about. Yeah. No, I think can I answer that? Can I just pick up somebody from the street?
Hey man,
Just
there's no wrong answers here.
good. No, just a nice like elder, sad person that could really that has come to peace with being sad.
I dig it. Hoaxfish in chat also suggests Danny DeVito, which I think is also an excellent thing. And I wish I knew the people at Corridor Digital because I think they would make an excellent ridiculous fishing short film. Uh, all right.
Uh,
And question number 5 on the 5 questions. And
okay.
this is the hardest one. Which kind of bee is the best bee?
I mean, there has to be the honeybee.
All right, boom.
Has to be.
Great
They make
answer.
hon- they make
They
honey.
they do. Whether they're, like, yeah. I mean, and they're not even just honey. They are the unsung heroes of the plant world.
Of our ecosystem as well.
Yeah. I love those things, even when
Yeah.
they're jerks and occasionally sting you for no reason.
Yeah, well, probably because we pissed them off, to be honest.
Dude, no, I mean legit. Like, I had one land on my arm, and like, I hadn't even seen the bee. Lands on my arm, walks like a couple inches up, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, it's a bee, it'll leave. And then it just stings me and flies away.
Wow. And then it dies, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude.
Yeah, what the fuck, mate? What are you? What's
Like,
wrong with you?
I was like, hey man, if your life's really sad, I'm sorry. Like, we can talk this out, but
Yeah. How?
like,
These things apparently hurt a lot. I've never been stung by a bee.
they sting a lot worse when you're a kid than when you're an adult. But again,
What?
too, it's like, it also stung me on my arm that has the full sleeve. So that arm's been through a whole heck of a lot. So it was just like, whatever, bring the bee.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. It's fine. I've stung myself a million times to get this image. I can deal with you, buddy.
But I can say, I used to describe the feeling of being tattooed as like getting stabbed or getting stung by a bunch of bees. That's inaccurate.
Oh.
Definitely, if being tattooed felt like getting stung by bees thousands of times, nobody would get tattooed. Because it is severely more painful than just a single tattoo needle going in.
So fun fact, I have like an extreme phobia for needles of all kinds.
Yeah.
So for me, even like watching somebody get tattooed is like, nope.
It's interesting because, like, I don't have like a severe phobia of needles. I'm not a huge fan of them, but like tattoo needles in me are totally fine.
Yeah.
Misty, my wife, like, dude, nah, her and needles. No. But she can sit down and get tattooed like a champ.
Wow.
For her, it's all about like depth and the style of the needle. So, but yeah,
the concept of the needle, like anything, just sort of like piercing skin, sounds bad to me.
I'm not gonna say that it isn't, but yeah, and it's, and
the result's probably worth it.
Yeah, I mean, even, like, let's think. Yeah. Based on my collection, I'd say it's at least 90% worth it.
I'm really curious for the
Hello Predator. Oh
yeah.
Man, dude, that was a present from Misty. We were when we were living in Florida. There was a tattoo convention in our little teeny town in Florida for some reason. I don't know. We went. And the guy had some flash on the table. He was a local artist who we had met his partner at IKEA a few weeks beforehand.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Small world, man.
Yes.
Also related to tattooing. And he had these bits of flash on his table. He's like, hey, I made these things, but nobody wants them. If you want it, I'll do it $100. And I was like, I don't have $100. And Missy was like, I'll get it for you if you want it. And I was like, okay. And it was a choice between Hello Kitty Boba Fett and Hello Kitty Predator. And
I just love that this person is just like, yeah, we have some Hello Kitty.
Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, Boba Fett, totally cool. But I like the Predator.
But Predator.
Yeah. So I got Hello Predator. Yeah, but the whole reason, though, that like we even met this guy at IKEA is we were waiting in line, and it's Florida, so you're always wearing short sleeve shirts, even in the dead of winter. And I've got the Maryland flag tattooed on my arm because from Maryland, very proud of it, stuff like that. And his partner was ahead of us in line, and he looked back and he's like, "Hey, is that the Maryland flag?" And I was like, "Yes, it is. Are you from Maryland?" Because only Marylanders know the flag.
Oh,
And he's like, yeah, I used to live up in Baltimore. And then so we went back and forth a little bit, and he gave me his card, and he's like, hey, this is my shop, this is me. There's gonna be the tattoo convention. We'll be there in a few weeks. And I was like, cool, I'll look you guys up.
yeah.
And
This is one of those defining American experiences that is really hard to replicate in other places. The Oh, are you from this state? Yes, I grew up in this tiny village that nobody has heard of, and then the other person goes, "Oh yeah, I lived like 210 miles north of it, just around the corner." And then you know like four things in the state that you have in common, and now you're best friends. Like
yeah,
it's really hard to do that in Europe because if I try to do that with like a German, I have to speak a different language,
yeah. No,
right?
we do have this really unique setup.
It's remarkable. Like every time I sit in, because there's this weird thing where I speak English well, right? I speak it fluently, and I can fit in most conversation. But there's always this moment where I realize I'm just not from the U.S. And it's always when somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I grew up in Pennsylvania," and then somebody else goes like, "Oh, I used to live in Pennsylvania," and it's like, "Oh, and I'm out."
No, and
There's
the funny
another.
thing is that in this particular instance, Maryland, for the most part, is very unique among states because we don't just go like, "Oh, I lived in like Smithsville." We narrow it down even further without being as specific because, like, I imagine, like we have the country, and then you have states, and then within states, you have these things called counties, which are like districts.
Yeah.
And in Maryland, we like to refer to ourselves as being from a particular county.
Wow.
So when you meet another Marylander, so it's like, hey, I'm from Maryland. I'm from Maryland. Well, where are you from? They go like, oh, I'm from Worcester County. And I'm
Yeah.
all like, oh, I'm from Anne Arundel County. And
Is
for some
Worcester County
reason,
still spelled Worcester? Is that also a Maryland thing?
well, it is spelled Worcester. It's
Yeah,
yeah. So
Worcester. Yeah,
yeah, but we still like because even the English call it Worcester. So
yeah,
except in
Worcester.
their more like
It was
precise way.
the first time I was in Boston, and like
Oh
that was
God, I am
I
so
got in so much
sorry.
trouble. Everything I read, I just read wrong.
Look, man, I will generally be fine with Boston because we both hate the Yankees. Uh, I mean, American baseball is like football to me for like Europeans, you
Yeah,
know, and the Yankees can rot in hell
Bel-
forever.
believe me, it's more like football for the Arabs. I remember
All
growing
right.
up in Egypt. My entire family is for this Egyptian football club called Al Ahly, and the other club that's also in Cairo is called Zamalek. And we had one kid in the family, one of my cousins or nephews. I don't know which word to use. My uncle's son, um, one of the younger ones, and he was Samarkawi. He was for the other team, and he literally watched soccer matches in a different room because it was just not safe for any of us. Otherwise, it's like goal goes the other way, just like yelling at. If we get a goal against, Alex scores. My dad will start yelling towards the other room, and he's like, "Hey, are you happy now? Huh? Are you happy now? That's what you caused us."
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, we know that here too. I mean, especially
Yeah,
like American football is the sport here, and my wife's family is from Wisconsin originally, so they're Green Bay Packers fans.
okay.
And I, of course, now having married into it, I have become a Green Bay Packers fan.
I
Uh,
think that's how it works.
yeah, it is. I got adopted into the Packers family, which meant that I have a few more championships under my belt than I had previously, and I get to claim one of the best quarterbacks as mine.
Nice.
Um, it works out, like
Yeah.
totally, but the Chicago Bears are their big rival. And my
Is it
Misty's younger sister, her boyfriend is an Illinois native, and he's a big Bears fan. So things
so?
get a
There's not.
little
I
weird.
just realized something. There's not this. So in the Netherlands, you've got all these soccer teams. In Egypt, you've got all these soccer teams. But once a year, or once every few years, once every 2 years, there's an Africa Cup or a Europe Cup or a World Cup, right? I
Yeah.
guess you don't have that with American football.
No, we just have it every year.
You just have Super Bowl.
Yeah, every
But
year.
it's not where everybody in the country gets together to cheer for the combined best of your country. right? You don't
No.
go over the team. You
Well,
don't go above the team rivalries because they're competing as teams. There's not this one moment where everybody, no matter what their team is, gets on the same bench and cheers for the same people.
well, everybody still gets together to celebrate it, and usually they pick one of the two teams to support, except in, like when it's the Patriots versus the Giants, and at which point everybody just kind of watches it to watch it, and Patriots fans and Giants fans are the only ones who care if somebody wins.
Yeah. No, it's weird. I just realized you don't have that because in the Netherlands you can be for Ajax, you can be for Feyenoord, you can be for PSV, you can be for AZ, you can be for all of these soccer teams. But once every few years, the best players from all these teams turn into this like Voltron,
Yeah.
like this Megazord that is the Dutch national soccer team.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we have, like we of course participate in the World Cup,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean,
but nobody else plays our
women teams
sports.
wins it.
Yeah, no, the women's team, like they are the women's team, of the world.
They took the World Cup, didn't they?
Dude, they've been taking I mean, when they don't win, they're still a top team.
Yeah.
It's they're like the historical Brazil of men's football.
Yeah. It's cool. It's very cool. I hope that works because I would welcome a US team in the World Cup.
I mean, I'd welcome us into like the quarterfinals. If we got that far, I'd lose my mind. Because like I grew up playing soccer as a kid. So it's like,
nice.
So not the last World Cup, but the 2014 World Cup.
Yeah, 2 ago.
I introduced Misty she grew up watching football, or American football. So she didn't learn the ins and outs of soccer. Not to say that not to say that I understand the big overarching strategy that all these teams are pulling, but I at least get the rules and I know the broad strokes.
Yeah.
So I'm communicating to her. It's like, oh, in this instance, she's like, oh, why'd they call a penalty there? Oh, because he was past this point when the pass was sent to him. Well, why does that matter? Well, because that's offsides in soccer.
Yeah.
And then oh, well, why are they just doing that? And I'm like, oh, they're right now trying to pull up a feint to draw the defense down here in hopes that they won't pay attention to the midfielder looping around over on the other end for a cross into a shot.
This is called a dive.
So it's just all this stuff, and she gained a new appreciation for the sport that she didn't previously have, and she actually was enjoying watching the games.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I like soccer. I played it for years. I mean, I've played lots of sports over over the course of my life, but I think soccer and surprisingly badminton have always been my two favorite sports to play.
Yo, I'm gonna be honest, badminton rocks.
Badminton is rough.
Dude, it's so fun.
It's super good, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Because after soccer, I did tennis, I did table tennis, I did squash, I did volleyball, I did basketball. I didn't like basketball. I actually didn't like most of those. But then I played badminton, and I remember just disliking tennis because it felt kind of slow. You have a lot of space and time to reposition, and they just have to make the field bigger to make it fun.
Yeah,
I guess badminton, you're there's barely any space, and you still have to run like nobody's business.
Oh yeah,
it's so intense that
it's like tennis but entertaining.
Back then, badminton it would just wreck me every time. I love that sport.
Well, Rami, unfortunately, I know I'm gonna have to go here in a minute.
Yeah.
And real quick, that is Scotch Tape 27. Thank you for the follow. So yeah, Rami, it's fucking good to see you, man.
It was a pleasure catching up. It's been way too long.
Yeah.
As these things go in our industry.
Yeah, especially this year being weird.
It's good talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always nice.
Well, you are of course always welcome here on the show anytime, if you're ever just thinking hey, I got something silly to talk about, just shoot me a message, man. There are a handful of people for whom I will move heaven and earth to make stuff work. You're definitely one of them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and let's make sure we stay in touch just in general.
Oh yeah, man. I'm always sending you messages.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm always very busy. I nowadays even have somebody helping me with scheduling because it's gotten really out of hand.
Yeah.
But
Oh, special thanks to Fred.
yes, he is a hero.
Um,
Um, but yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is really
absolutely.
cool. What a crazy good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I thank the guys at Rooster Teeth for getting me off my lazy ass on this one. I'm not like supported or anything by them at all, but they started using Unreal Engine for a podcast, and I was like, those sons of bitches are trying to move in on my territory. And I was like, just got to do it. Time to get it out there again. So, thank you again, Rami, for joining us. Would love to have you again sometime in the future. And then everybody in the audience, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for the follows, the hosts, the questions, the jokes, all that wonderful stuff. And the people on YouTube who will hopefully be watching this whenever I get around to actually uploading it, which I'll actually probably be able to do because I was actually broadcasting video this time. Yeah, so YouTube folks, hang out a little bit longer after this goodbye. I'll have something special for you. For the Twitch folks, thank you again so much for joining us on this show. I will be back next week. I will hopefully have another guest. If not, I'll do like my news spiel again. So you can watch a previous VOD on what that was like, not the last two, the oldest one. That's the one where I like didn't screw things up horribly. But again, thank you all so much for the follows, the hosts, and everything. I'm still working on this goodbye thing. Yeah, there we go. I love you all very much. Be safe, wash your hands, social distance, and I will see you all next time on that Thom Clancy show. And hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff to keep up to date on any guests and all that stuff. And now is the part where I take off my headset and I look like a really sad marionette as I stop streaming. So thank you all very much. I will see you next week.